Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of the Premier Football Podcast. Spurs beat City 2-0 to go top of the table. Liverpool see off apparent challengers Leicester City. Arsenal drop to the bottom half of the table despite some positive signs we may have seen from Arteta this season. I'm joined by Joe to talk about that one momentarily. Joe, before we do get on to the football, you've completed a transfer in the last week. You've gone out on loan, have you?
I've gone out on loan, Rafe. Yeah, the management took the decision before consulting with the player, and the player is now representing Trinity Business School. Some big changes.
And how was the first day in the new changing room, in the new locker room? Any hazing?
Yeah, there are a few secret initiatives to go through, but we were not sort of things that you can discuss on a family-friendly football show.
Is there anything you would like to discuss on this show? It is a football show, but talking about the Premier League, Spurs are obviously top of the table. Like I said, Arsenal are down to the bottom half. There wasn't a whole lot of drama this weekend. I really just want to hear you talk about Spurs and Arsenal and the contrast in fortunes between the two North London clubs.
Do you know what I was thinking this week? I watched all of The Crown season 4 last week. I don't know if you just want to chat about that instead of talking about the football. That'll be fine. It's pretty much the worst weekend an Arsenal fan could have in late November is that Arsenal drop into the bottom or stay in the bottom half with another insipid display, and Spurs go top of the table by beating one of the best teams in the country. Very, very, very worrying.
Okay, well, look, let's look away from North London for a minute. I'll give you a little bit of a break, and we'll have a look at Manchester City, because I suppose that's the real headline. They're obviously 1 point behind Arsenal in 12th. They do have a game in hand, but they are already, eight points off first place, which is 3 defeats for Liverpool or Leicester. Well, two if you factor in the game in hand, but they have to go and win that first. I mean, at this early stage of the season, do you think that Liverpool will lose 2 more games than Manchester City?
No, absolutely not. I think from the start of the season, we were saying, both of us, Liverpool first. You've been quite insistent, and to be fair to you, it seems to be turning out this way, that this was going to be the year that Manchester City slip out of the top 4, or at the very least that they have a prolonged period of poor form. And that's exactly what's happened over the opening weeks of the season. I still think that they're good enough to get back into second place. I mean, it's very early days at the same time, and they have so much experience and so much quality in that squad. It just doesn't seem to be working right now. I mean, there was obviously the will he, won't he stay? His contract, Guardiola's contract, was up at the end of the season. He signed a 2-year extension to the end of the 2022-23 season. So maybe now that he's done that, their fortunes will change and they'll start playing like this team that we know them to be. But right now, over the past few weeks, they've been desperately poor.
Yeah, and you obviously mentioned the uncertainty over Guardiola's future. I think this season really started with uncertainty for City as well, with the whole Messi saga that seemed to drag out over the summer, and it almost distracted the people at Manchester City from the important targets that their club should have had in the transfer market. I mean, this Messi thing came about because of what happened at Barcelona, not because of what City identified internally as a need. You know, they had done this for so many years, where we had praised their recruitment as they'd gone out and they identified top young talents and they brought them in at the right time. And, you know, they had this giant squad full of the best players in the world. And I'm not convinced about the centre-back that they brought in, Diaz. He's going to need time to settle in the Premier League. He's young. I mean, the issue that City had last season was an issue at the back, with centre-back and Fernandinho dropping in there. And the issue was that they didn't have a proper replacement for Sergio Aguero. Now, Sergio Aguero is obviously coming back to fitness now, and he'll be a massive boost for that team going forwards. But I'm still not sure about what they've got at the back. I was thinking about this only today, and I was getting quite annoyed about it. It's widely regarded that Aymeric Laporte is the second best centre-half in the Premier League behind Virgil van Dijk. And I was thinking about it, and I don't really know why. I mean, is he a good defender in his own right?
No, he is.
Or is he just the best defender in the best team that's not Liverpool?
I think that it might be that as well, but maybe because he's left-footed as well. Left-footed players often look better than they are. I don't know. To me, if you're technically competent and left-footed, you stand out, I think. And the fact that he's a centre back and he stands out on the ball as well, maybe it's something to do with that.
Is he the Manchester City captain?
No. Who's the manager? Fernandinho is, and De Bruyne is vice captain.
I feel like there's a leadership issue at the back for Manchester City.
Definitely. I mean, since company as well. Even last season, David Silva was made captain. Amazing player, but never a leader. Really? I mean, leads by example, but he's not going to take the game by the scruff of the neck and rouse his players in the way that Vincent Kompany did for 10 years or so. I mean, the decision to let we've talked about this a lot, actually, man. Like the recruitment at the back and the lack of planning for after Kompany. Did they not realize how? Do you think Pep underrated him? He didn't realize how crucial he was to their success over in the modern era. Like all of the success they have had. Vincent Kompany's been there for it.
I think that Pep, there's almost an arrogance to Pep's game where he trusted the players that he'd brought in and he trusted his system and he thought we won't have to defend that much. We won enough games without him last year. You know, we have a lot of players there. We'll get one in. You know, Fernandinho can drop in if needed. We have enough midfielders to cover. But systematically, I mean, we know that Guardiola doesn't change his style. No. And he's been found out everywhere he's gone after 2 or 3 years. And this is the first time that we've actually seen him, you know, sign on for a second term. And he's going to need to actually go and rebuild the City squad now. And we've never seen him have to rebuild one of his own teams. And I think there are massive question marks over whether he can actually do it or not.
I have another point. It worked at Bayern Munich and at Barcelona. He got away with being able to play fullbacks and central midfielders in the heart of defence. You can't get away with, well, maybe Liverpool can because Fabinho actually happens to be a world-class centre-back. I mean, what a player. We can maybe get onto him and Liverpool later. But that aside, it doesn't really work. You need to have your core of central defenders. If you start shoehorning in fullbacks and central midfielders to play there over long periods, maybe you can get away with it for a few weeks, but over the course of the season, you won't. And I think that was definitely, when you talk about an arrogance of his belief in his system and his way of doing things, that for me definitely stands out because that's something he got away with. He was able to do in Spain and in Germany.
If you look at the teams that he's built in Spain and in Germany, I suppose you would always associate with a Pep Guardiola team a world-class midfield. Players that are able to get on the ball and they are just better than the opposition. You know, it doesn't matter if they're being pressed by 1, 2, 3, they'll step around them, they'll find the pass, they'll play with ease regardless of who they're up against. And aside from De Bruyne, I don't know that they have that real quality in midfield at the moment.
I was going to say that after David Silva left on a free transfer to Real Sociedad at the end.
I mean, Phil Foden's good. Sorry, don't get me wrong.
No, he's great. You know how much I rate him, but he's not there yet. And Ilkay Gundogan, is he? No, he's definitely not. I mean, he's all right. He's pretty good, but he's not at that level. Bernardo Silva, is he? Kind of same again. He's not a David Silva replacement. He's not at that level.
Okay, well, look, I don't think anybody thinks that Everton are going to get into the top 4 this year. How many Manchester City players would get into Everton's midfield?
De Bruyne. On form, it would just be him.
It would.
I think Rodri has failed to settle, hasn't he? You'd have to say.
How many would get into Leicester's midfield?
De Bruyne.
Liverpool's De Bruyne. Spurs.
De Bruyne. No, Spurs. Spurs is a unique system because I think for Spurs, for Mourinho, his midfield is perfect.
Yeah.
What he wants to do right
De Bruyne
now.
Might play on the wing for him, maybe.
Yeah, I think he probably would. I think the 3 that he has there are his dream trio at the moment. No, I completely agree with you. It's worrying for Manchester City. And we haven't even got started on the striker situation. If Aguero can't stay fit, Gabriel Jesus is not going to be able to score 20 goals.
How many world-class players do they have? Because they do rely, I think, on the world-class element of it. The coaching. I think this is the first time that we've seen Liverpool. I'm saying Liverpool because they're the benchmark at the moment. We've seen them better coached to a higher standard than City. But now I'm starting to think that there are a host of teams that are coached to a higher standard than City at the moment.
Well, even going back to the FA Cup semi-final, Arteta outcoached a really average Arsenal side against Manchester City. Mourinho's done it multiple times at Spurs. Didn't Pochettino do it in the Champions League as well a couple of seasons ago for Spurs? So it's been happening that Pep is being outcoached by coaches who would be thought to be inferior to him.
I heard Barry Glendenning say the other day that when the sides last met, Spurs won 2-0 and it was a complete surprise. But when they met this time around, Spurs won 2-0 and it didn't surprise anybody.
It's a fantastic point. I was hoping that City would win, but I wasn't absolutely sure. And I know for a fact, because we had the conversation that we were looking at Spurs' fixtures and you said they'll beat City. I remember that. It was on the pod a couple of weeks ago.
It was. I'm smart like that. I know a thing or two about football.
Yeah, and you don't get a rush of blood to the head when it comes to the teams that you don't like. You're pretty realistic.
Well, in fairness, I think I was a little bit too realistic. I think I tipped United to finish second this year in our first pod, and they're currently still. I tipped them and they're currently 9th, so they've got a bit of catching up to do. But I'm happy enough with where I've tipped City. I tipped Spurs, I think, to break into the top 4 this season. They sit on 20 points ahead of Liverpool on goal difference after 9 games. Joe, it is time to talk about them. How impressed with Spurs have you been this season?
Yeah, pretty impressed. I like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg a lot. I liked him a lot for Southampton, and I think to be able to get him for £15 million is a really good piece of business. Harry Kane and Heung-min Son are in the form of their life. They're 2 world-class players, and they seem to be doing they are doing the business in every single game. So when you have world-class forwards who are, you know yourself as a Liverpool fan, how confident are you going into every game because you know one of the 3 are going to do the business? And now with Jota as well, there's another one. It just makes you feel so much more comfortable when you have strikers who are in form because you know they're going to score.
Man, I really want to talk about Jota in a little bit.
I'm sure we'll get on to Jota. But I mean, credit to Mourinho. Losing the first game of the season against Everton, everyone was saying, you know, everyone was predicting that it was going to end in free fall. It hasn't. He's turned it around. He's got them playing in a very pragmatic way. They're playing winning football. They're playing Jose Mourinho football, and it looks like there could be one last hurrah in the mix for him.
Well, look, it's Jose Mourinho in a second season at a football club, and you write that off at your absolute peril.
You do, yeah. But I still think, you know, from an Arsenal point of view, I'm very grateful that Liverpool are there, as I was when Spurs rocked up in the Champions League final in 2019. I was very grateful that they were playing Liverpool because Liverpool are just too good. Liverpool will retain the Premier League this year, and that gives me some solace.
Is Harry Kane the best player in the Premier League?
He's up there. I mean, like I think I said it last week. He's transformed himself into a much better version of what Teddy Sheringham was. He's a perfect 9 and 10 combination. He's still got that great goal scoring record, that will to get on the end of everything. But I don't know if it's from Mourinho or from himself wanting to come and play deeper. Whoever's decision that is, it's paying off hugely because he's playing these wonderful through balls into their other forwards. Wonderful player.
Okay, thanks. Like I said, I really do want to talk about Liverpool, but while we're riding the North London train, I'm not even going to ask a question. Yeah, I'm just gonna float it out there and see where it takes you.
Yeah. So last night was really bad.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off straight away.
Sure.
We had this discussion among ourselves in the WhatsApp group, and let's put in perspective that it was a game that finished 0-0, a tough away game against a team that have been breaking down better teams than Arsenal this year. You know, they've been scoring goals against everybody. I don't know if anybody has managed to keep a clean sheet against Leeds.
This is the first time.
Yeah, and in Ellen Road as well. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world. They are only 7 points off first. They are only 4 points off fourth. But they were shit.
No, it was. This is the thing, and I agree with that. In preview, you can say in previous years, under Unai Emery, under Arsene Wenger, going down to 10 men away to a team like Leeds, it would have been 3s or 4s. The heads didn't drop, and to be fair to Arteta, he's instilled some degree of grit in the team, and they do have. There was a draw against Chelsea when Arsenal went down to 10 men at the back end of last season, where they've done this before. But what's so worrying is that Arsenal are not creating any chances. Arsenal have gone over 7 hours without scoring a goal from open play. Aubameyang hasn't scored from open play since the opening day of the season against Fulham. The midfield of Xhaka, Ceballos and Willock was torturous to watch. I think I would have been better. I think you and I would have been better there. You to break up play and me to kind of go box to box and sprayed around a little bit. I thought that it was turgid. To be fair to them, they worked hard, but I kind of wonder sometimes what sort of a footballer Dani Ceballos is, because I expect him to be getting on the ball, to be driving through midfield, playing progressive passes and playing quick football and being the driving force in midfield. And he very rarely is. Occasionally he does it, like maybe 1 in 5 or 6 games. But most of the times it's just backwards and sideways and poor passes, and he's focused more on trying to hold his position. And that might be down to Arteta and his demands that he puts on the team to be extra organized. And I think there's a strong argument to say that his focus on instilling a better sense of defensive responsibility and more organization among the whole squad has had a disastrous effect on Arsenal's ability to create anything going forward.
I think the way he set up on the weekend, he massively tried to overcompensate for the lack of the two key midfield players in El Nene and Thomas Partey. You know, those guys have provided such a degree of stability in that midfield. I know Partey's not played as much this year, but since he's come in, he's looked really good and he's looked really confident. And I think he has asked the midfielders to play a little bit deeper to protect his centre backs. It's like we spoke about this. They're nullifying their attacking threat in order to protect centre halves that just aren't good enough to be at the club.
I think Gabriel is good. I like him. I worry about Rob Holding as a long-term Arsenal player.
Can Hector Bellerin defend?
Yeah,
mate. Yes, every game I watch him, I see it's the same. Teams know how to pull him out, and then they just play 1-2s around him. The amount of times I've seen him get turned and have to chase back, and those cutbacks coming from the byline on his side, because he just bites, he steps out, he breaks the line, and I don't know if there's a lack of cover helping him out from the right side of midfield, or
that's what. No, you're right. He has a nasty habit to get turned inside out. However, Nicolas Pepe didn't come back yesterday. Pepe put in one of the worst displays I've ever seen an Arsenal player put in, and he capped it off with a disgraceful red card. I know there was very little in it, but you can't put your head to another. We've both played Sunday League football to a decent standard. You can't do that at any level, let alone in the Premier League with VAR. I mean, no, this is Pepe doesn't track back. And let's not kid ourselves. He's not Cristiano Ronaldo or Gareth Bale or Neymar. If you're a run-of-the-mill winger, you have to be able to work hard. I mean, even Wilfried Zaha works harder than him, and Zaha doesn't work that hard. I thought he was really disappointing, Pepe. And did you hear Arteta's interview after the game? He absolutely.
I will deal with the player.
He threw him under the bus in a way that only Jose Mourinho likes to throw players under the bus, and I was okay with it.
The thing that upsets me, and it doesn't even upset me, to be honest, because I'm not an Arsenal fan. I don't really care what happens to Arsenal. You know, I actually find it all really amusing most of the time. But to be honest, it's the things that happen at Arsenal off the pitch that I almost find more entertaining. It was the meltdown of the Arsenal fans yesterday and the blow up at Pepe. You know, he got some awful abuse online from both Arsenal and Leeds fans. Some of it's being investigated, some of it's not. But the facts of the matter, I think I was talking about this on Twitter earlier. He's on 140k a week. He's got 3.5 years left on his deal. They bought him for £70 million. He's not going anywhere. No matter how much people on Twitter kick and scream about it, sorry, he's not going anywhere. So if you've got a player at your club that's struggling, and you know that it's going to be impossible to shift them, you're you have to try to get behind him. And I know what he did yesterday was inexcusable. But if I was an Arsenal fan, look, if it was a Liverpool player that did that, if Sadio Mane got in the face of someone else,
He has credit in the bank. He can do that.
Okay. If Xherdan Shaqiri got in the face of someone else, and he dropped the head in, I wouldn't be taking to social media having a go at him. I'd be taking to social media having a go at whoever went down. Who was it? Alakovsky or whatever his name was.
Alioski, yeah.
Alioski that went down. Because, come on, lad. What's happened to football being a man's game? I know that's not politically correct, but it's a contact sport. Like, come on.
It is, but at the same time, we both know ourselves that if you touch someone, or if someone touches you, you have every right to go down because it's a free kick.
Yeah, we know that, and I'm not saying that if I was the defender, I wouldn't do the same thing. But I'm saying if I was an Arsenal fan, I would be taking this point of view and defending my team, even if I sound like an idiot for doing it.
I think the thing is that he's had so many chances. He costs so much money. He doesn't really seem to care. His body language is more frustrating than Özil's. I think there's a lot to be said for, like, Shaqiri puts in a shift. Shaqiri runs around.
Shaqiri was the example I used, but I mean, if there's someone at my club, as long as they're still pulling on that shirt every week, man.
I just think that, like, with Pepe is such a frustrating player because there's clearly talent there, but at the same time, it's instinctive talent. It's not in. He has zero football intelligence. If you watch his play, he doesn't. When he's dribbling, Rafe's having a little bit of a moment off. He's muted himself because his whiskey went down the wrong way. But when you watch Pepe play, when he tries to get past someone, like the only way he can do it is relying on his pace and his pace alone. He doesn't have a trick in him. His game.
Mate, he doesn't have a trick in him. What?
No, he doesn't. He relies on his pace. I promise you. He can't put the ball through a player's legs or step over and skip past players properly.
Do you think that the coaches that he's had at Arsenal have got the best out of him, or the style
Absolutely
of football that is played?
No, absolutely not. Pepe excels playing counter-attacking football, but the style of football that Unai Emery and Mikel Arteta have wanted to play is this kind of slow, pedestrian, controlling football with an emphasis on organisation. And he is not that type of player. If you put him in Liverpool's team, he'd be much better as a reserve for Mohamed Salah.
So what's the solution? Because he's not going anywhere for 3 years.
I reckon if someone was mad enough to pay his wages,
no one is.
£20 million.
No one's mad enough to pay those wages. No one. Who's going to give him 140 grand a week?
It would have to be someone back in. I don't know.
Nobody is the answer. He's not going anywhere.
Well, then, like, the thing is, Mikel Arteta does not want to. Arteta doesn't fancy him to begin with. But he had started just one game this season before yesterday.
You've done this with Ozil already, where he spent the last 2 years just riding out his contract, and that's what Pepe is going to be like, unless you can find a way to fit him into the team somewhere.
I'm actually of the belief that Pepe and Aubameyang and Saka would be a really, really dangerous front three if you were playing fast counter-attacking football. I'm absolutely sure.
So someone has to have a word with the manager then.
I think the manager needs to. I mean, think of Antonio Conte in his first few. I'm not saying that Arteta's Conte or that Arsenal are that great Chelsea side, because they were great and they won the league in style. But it took Conte kind of 7 or 8 games in his first season. I know Arteta's had more than that, but to realize that it wasn't working, and he changed the whole system around. Sometimes it just takes a manager like Arteta's going to try and persevere with his beliefs until, I don't know, either he realizes or someone above him is like, here, Mikel, you got to fix up, because this isn't going to end well for you. You're on a bad run. The fans are on your back, and you need to change something. And then he changes his style. But I think that's obvious. I mean, look, 7 hours without a goal from open play, something has to change, because that's not that's sustainable.
If fans were to be back in the stadium next weekend, would that be a better or worse thing for Arsenal?
It's been a relief that fans haven't been allowed in the stadium so far this season.
Do you think that there would be very loud calls for Arteta's head already?
Yes, and I think that I'm trying to think. Willian playing at the Emirates would be getting worse than what Xhaka got last season when Xhaka threw the armband on the floor. Pepe would have, I know it was away, but Pepe would have been slaughtered yesterday. Arsenal fans are the most reactionary little dweebs on the planet, and I'm one of them. Like the contrast, like you yourself as a Liverpool fan, that sums up Liverpool. You're all about getting behind the team, getting behind the squad. Arsenal fans talk a lot about that online, but they just like they're so quick to. We are such a quick bunch to
and look,
to go over the top. And
I think
throw
that
the toys out
there
of the
is
pram.
that element of every fan base as well, Joe. I don't think it's just Arsenal fans, but I think that the Arsenal fans seem to have found a platform. You know, other clubs don't give platforms to these narky complainers. You know, people don't pay as much attention to them, but somehow enough people have managed to infiltrate influential areas of social media.
Well, that's AFTV, isn't it? That's
not just them, though.
No, not just them, but I mean, they kind of kicked that off. And then there's a lot of Arsenal fans with big voices on Twitter and things like that. And it's just, I don't know, because I follow a lot of Arsenal fans on Twitter and Instagram. I see it, but it's definitely there. I mean, a lot of people want Arteta gone, which I let's just clear it up now. I don't think that that's the solution, because who do you like? He got promoted over the summer, by the way. He went from first team coach to manager, so he got the. Tell me,
Mauricio Pochettino. He's still available before United get him.
I honestly think Arteta's a good manager. I think that this is his first bad patch. I think he's shown enough to warrant more time.
I think the FA Cup gives him credit in the bank in terms of delivering success, but I think if they're still in the bottom half by Christmas, he could be in trouble.
I think he could be in trouble as well. You can't be finishing in the bottom half. You can't. I like it. There are other issues at play at Arsenal. The squad is really bad. And that's not only Arteta's fault. He's barely been, he's not even been there a year. So there are more problems than just the manager.
Right. So we know that Spurs are good. Arsenal are bad.
City
are bad. United are good.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. They picked up a 1-0 winning against West Brom at home.
Yeah, West Brom, who had a
making
penalty,
tough work of it.
West Brom had a penalty taken off them, and Manchester United got a penalty retaken
for handball.
Yeah,
but winning.
I think I said it last week. I really think that from all fans, exercise a bit of patience if you can, and it's difficult. I know that myself, being an Arsenal fan, and just after Boxing Day, then we'll all have a much better idea of how things are going to shape up.
Manchester United, Arsenal, and Manchester City have all got a negative goal difference at this stage of the season.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Arsenal also have one of the best defensive records in the Premier League this season, so that shows you where their problems are. But yeah, Manchester United, I mean, that's the Spurs loss, the 6-1.
A team that have the best goal difference in the league, joint with Spurs. Chelsea, 2 points off the lead. Another comfortable win against another shit team.
This is the thing. I mean, they've fair play to them for winning these games and keeping clean sheets. I mean, you can only beat.
I think this is 8 or 9 clean sheets in a row for Chelsea
in all competitions, and that's impressive. Like I said, you can only beat what's put in front of you. But let's judge Chelsea when they've played some of the big boys.
Fair enough.
I do think that this is a very this favorable run has allowed them. I mean, it's good that they've won, but it's allowed their players to play themselves into a bit of form as well. Timo Werner looks very good.
Joe, I have a question for you. Can you rate James Milner's career from 1 to 10?
I'd probably give it a 9, because he's really exercised every last ounce of talent that he had, and he play him left back, right back, centre midfield, left wing, right wing, centre back, up front, goalkeeper. He'd give you 110%, and he's a model professional. And the fact that I didn't think he'd be so good for Liverpool, but he's a really key member of that squad. I reckon there's a coaching job for him at Melwood when his when his playing career finishes, I think that he's that influential in the dressing room.
He started
Great player.
He started the game at right back, and after 58 minutes, Naby Keita went down and he moved into the left side of midfield. And he was probably the best midfielder on the pitch. And bear in mind the likes of James Maddison and Gini Wijnaldum was also brilliant that day. But I think Milner was better than him. He was better than Yuri Tielemans. The first thing he did in midfield was play a lovely through ball for Sadio Mane and nearly set up a goal within a few seconds. I'm running out of ways to describe just how fantastic he is.
Yeah, there aren't too many superlatives that you can use that we haven't used before, that haven't been used before to describe him. He's a sort of player that every squad needs. Everyone needs a player who can play in multiple positions, who always puts in 110%, and who's a leader. And he has so much experience in this stage as well. He's an invaluable member of club squad.
In my head, that's the job I do for my local team. In practice, it's probably an entirely different story.
Well, you do play in nets a good bit, don't you?
I have a feeling I'm picked only because I'm tall enough to help put up the nets at the start of the game. I can reach the crossbar without using the little step ladder, so I can do one by myself in the time it takes three lads to do the other one. I think that's the only reason I get picked.
Does having a car help as well?
Oh, for away games, big time.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I know you've talked about Liverpool being, big favourites in your opinion to go on and win the league. There was obviously massive questions asked over their squad depth coming into this game, missing Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, Trent Alexander-Arnold, missing Thiago, missing Oxlade-Chamberlain, Shaqiri, missing others as well. And yes, they battled away a Leicester team that were top of the table comfortably 3-0 without Leicester laying a glove on them.
Do you know, no matter which players are missing, do you know who will not be missing?
Mohamed Salah. Mohamed Salah, sorry.
I know he's out with COVID. Do you know who won't be missing for Liverpool? Jurgen Klopp.
Unless he gets COVID.
Is the best manager in the world.
He is, isn't he?
And great managers, if you think back to Alex Ferguson, the best manager to ever coach in English football, probably the best manager of all time. And some of the teams that he won the Premier League with, especially in his last 10 years when he had no money.
In his last
season, yeah. I mean, great managers get the best out of thin squads or squads ravaged with injuries. And I expect Jurgen Klopp, no matter what injury, the crisis they have with injuries and COVID cases and close contacts, etc., this season has been insane. They've been without any fit centre backs, or maybe one fit centre back, for months now, and it's not affecting them. They had one blip against Aston Villa and the two draws against Everton and Manchester United. They drew with Everton and Manchester United, right? That was or Manchester City. I can't remember off the top of my head, but those are expected because they're derbies. You'll take them. The Villa game was just a mad game of football that you will never see the likes of again. And I fully expect Liverpool to retain their title, and quite comfortably. I don't think there's going to be a race. Once we get after Christmas, Liverpool are just going to pull away from everyone else. They're too good. They'll do well in Europe as well.
Is Andy Robertson the best left back in the world?
Probably. I really, really like young Canadian left back at Bayern Munich.
Alphonso Davies.
Alphonso Davies, yeah.
He's exciting. Player. But mate, if you think about what Andy Robertson's done with Scotland over the international break, the emotional roller coaster he was on, I think he played every minute of the 3 games.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
He came back and he put in a man of the match performance against Leicester. He was up and down. In the absence of Trent on the right side, almost everything went through the left side, and he was everywhere, man. He got 2 assists. Yeah. He put in fantastic cross after fantastic cross after fantastic cross. He neutralized any threat that came down that side. His link-up play with Sadio Mane, his link-up play with Gini Wijnaldum, his link-up play with Fabinho. He was just brilliant, and he played. I know James Milner was captain on the other side, but he put in a real captain's performance, if that makes sense, playing at left back.
Yeah, it does. £8 million from Hull City, from a relegated Hull City. It's one of the best pieces of business that we've seen in the Premier League in recent years. And in all honesty, he probably is the best left back in world football. He's a genuine athlete. He can get up and down that left hand side all day, and his technique is fantastic. And he's got an intelligent football head on him as well.
And he's a Duracell battery.
Yeah, he is. He can literally run all day. He's a great player.
I don't have too much positive to say about Leicester in this game. You know, their ability to defend set pieces is beyond questionable. I mean, maybe the first 2 or 3, it was clear that Liverpool had the advantage. They were getting free headers. They were getting flick-ons. They were getting knockdowns, not just from corners, but from free kicks as well. And I think it's an issue that's kind of plagued Brendan Rodgers through his managerial career.
He's very stubborn. I don't think the zonal marking works in England, and he's him and Benitez both opted for zonal marking at all times under Liverpool, and for years Liverpool were really, really poor at defending set pieces. You'll remember that very well. They had a nasty habit of conceding from set pieces, and I mean, I've praised Brendan Rodgers so many times on this podcast. I think he's a great manager and he's improved so much, but this is his willingness to believe in himself, in his methods too much, will be his Achilles heel. You have to be able to be a little bit flexible.
He went to Anfield, and credit to him, he stuck to his guns, but like you said, he is overly stubborn, and he tried to play football against one of the best pressing teams in Europe, and Roberto Firmino was absolutely incredible. He turned the ball over so many times. He worked so hard. He turned. He brought other players into the game. He obviously got his goal as well. Jota and Mane, their pressing was phenomenal. But I don't understand how managers can go to Anfield, a venue that Liverpool are now 64 games unbeaten in all competitions. It's a club record. I looked up the Premier League record earlier. Do you care to hazard a guess?
Is it Manchester United? Is it Arsenal? Chelsea? Mourinho?
How many?
That 2004 to 2006 period. I don't know, 69 games?
86 games unbeaten in the league at home.
86 games unbeaten at home. That is insane.
So that's the bar.
The benchmark. Yeah.
But Brendan Rodgers going there trying to play football though.
But if we look at who's beaten Liverpool, the rare occasions in English football in recent times, Arsenal have done it twice in the Charity Shield and in 3 times actually in the Carling Cup and in the league, and that is by letting Liverpool have all of the ball and then pouncing, and then Aston Villa playing through Liverpool's press, countering the counter attack.
Yeah, for sure.
Exposing the high line and playing football and trying to play through them is not really doable.
Atletico Madrid did it last year. Watford did it last year. A host of teams did it towards the end of last season. Just sat deep and played counter-attacking football. And to be honest, with Fabinho and Matip playing at the back and James Milner on the right side, you'd think that would be the best cause of attack. But they tried to play everything in wide areas. Everything I think came down their left side in the first half, and they tried to get the better of James Milner, and it just seemed really, really naive that he didn't. That they were trying to pass the ball out from the back. They were trying to play into areas in midfield, and it highlighted how good players like Gini Wijnaldum were. I mean, Wijnaldum and Firmino really shone in that game in terms of their work rate and their ability to tackle and turn in tight areas, because the midfield was congested, but the space that they managed to find in behind the Leicester team, like. There was just one team that was much, much better in almost every single area than the other. And it was the team that contained Curtis Jones playing his second ever Premier League game and Jota scoring his 4th goal in 4 Anfield appearances.
It's been a great signing.
Yeah, for me, there's no way that Liverpool don't go on to win the league from here, to be honest, because they've only got players coming back every single week. Like they're going to have Thiago coming back into that team next week. They're going to have Oxlade-Chamberlain coming back into that team next week. They're going to have Shaqiri coming back into that team next week. They're going to have Salah coming back into that team next week.
They're going to have eventually Van Dijk coming back into that team. It might not be until the
apparently,
latter half of the season.
Apparently he's back in training. Not in obviously full training, but he's back in early rehabilitation stages.
A It doesn't surprise me. He's a freak of nature. It's like Erling Haaland. My God, I want to see Erling Haaland in the Premier League. What a player. He scored 4 goals against Hertha Berlin over the weekend. The best striker in the world. He's a phenomenon.
He's who he's who you'd want Arsenal to go and sign.
Oh, I'd love that. I mean, there's no way of that. Well, I'd be very surprised if a better team didn't snap him up. But obviously, that's who I'd want. But no, on Liverpool, I've said it before. I'll maintain it all season. They are just too good for everyone else. They're a cut above the rest, and they will comfortably retain the title.
Look, Burnley are still beating Crystal Palace 1-0. And to be honest, from the second that goal went in, it was always going to be the final score because Crystal Palace without Will Zaha were never breaking down. Burnley at Turf Moor, especially when they had no reason to come and chase the game. That lifts Burnley out of the drop zone. Fulham obviously stay down after another really poor defensive display against Everton. And look, I know Everton are a good team going forwards. They had Richarlison back. They look decent themselves going forward, or maybe Everton were just muck at the back. But it's 4 points from 9 games for Fulham, 3 points from 9 games for West Brom, and 1 point from 9 games for Sheffield United.
Yeah. I took some slack on Twitter for saying that Sheffield United are all 4 of those teams are 4 of the worst we've seen in recent memory, and Sheffield United in particular. And I stand by that. They can't score goals. No matter how tidy you look or how decent at the back you look, if you can't score goals, you are going to fail. It's happening with Arsenal right now. It's happening with Sheffield United right now. It's
happening with West Brom right now.
It's happening with West Brom, Fulham as well, even though they did score twice. What Burnley have, although they have a terrible squad, really thin squad, is that they have better individual players who've been there and done it than the rest of those 3 teams. And they have a better manager than the rest of those 3 teams. So they probably, as bad as they are, and they are in an absolute state, they probably have it in them to sneak out of that and finish 17th or 16th.
Bear in mind, a win lifts them out of the drop zone and they have a game in hand. You know, if they were to win their game in hand, they're still 17th, mind you, because the gap to the bottom 4 is so big already. But, I mean, I'm really starting to worry for Sheffield United. Chris Wilder was pacing the touchline like a man possessed the other day. Normally someone that's very composed, that sits and watches the game, you know, gets up and the advice that he does give or the instructions that he gave are very meaningful and with a purpose. Whereas he looked, and dare I say it, desperate on the weekend.
That's not a good sign when you see a manager who's always calm and collected and has a specific style on the touchline. When you see them losing the plot and gesticulating or whatever, it's a sign that things aren't quite going to plan. It's going to be a very long season for all 4 of those teams. I mean, any of them could pull out of it, but I strongly believe that those will be the 4 teams down there fighting until the last game week or second last game week.
Okay. I don't know that there's too much else that we want to talk about this week. Obviously, there's European football midweek. You're going to have your feature piece out again on Thursday, and then we'll be back at it hopefully again next Monday.
Yes.
Fantastic. I'll hold you to it. It's a date. I'll talk to you then.
It is a date. We get together every Monday, man. All right.
Cheers, man.